In the land of Kemet, near the great river that gave life to all the villages, there lived a wealthy merchant named Jacobi. He had traveled far in his youth, crossing deserts and mountains, and had built a prosperous trading business. Jacobi had 12 sons, born to him by 4 different wives, as was the custom in those days.
The 11th son was named Yusufu, and from the day of his birth Jacobi's heart sang with special joy. Perhaps it was because Yusufu's mother, Raheli, had been Jacobi's true love, the woman he had worked 14 years to marry. Or perhaps it was because Yusufu had been born when Jacobi thought he would have no more children. Whatever the reason, everyone in the household could see that Yusufu held a special place in his father's heart.
As Yusufu grew, he became a thoughtful young man, with unusual wisdom for his age. While his brothers rushed into decisions, Yusufu would sit under the acacia tree and consider all sides of a matter. While his brothers boasted of their strength, Yusufu spoke kindly to the servants and the poor who came seeking aid. His eyes seemed to see beyond the surface of things, understanding meanings that others missed.
When Yusufu reached his 17th year, Jacobi called for the finest tailor in all the region. "Make for my son a garment unlike any other," he instructed. "Let it have colors as bright as the sunset over the river, with patterns that tell the story of our family."
The tailor worked for many weeks, weaving threads of crimson, azure, gold, and purple. He embroidered symbols of prosperity and blessing along the hem and sleeves. When the robe was complete, it was indeed magnificent, a garment fit for a prince rather than a merchant's son. Jacobi presented the robe to Yusufu before all the family. "My son," he said, "this robe represents my love for you and my hopes for your future. May you wear it with honor." Yusufu accepted the gift with gratitude, bowing low before his father. But as he stood in his brilliant new robe, he did not see the darkness gathering in his brother's eyes. The eldest brother Reubeni whispered to the others, "See how our father elevates him above us all. Are we not his sons as well?" Shimoni, the second eldest, clenched his fists. "We work in the fields from dawn until dusk, yet Yusufu walks about in fine robes like a chief's son." The eldest brother, Reubeni, whispered to the others, "See how our father elevates him above us all. Are we not his sons as well?" Levi added, "Father sends us to do the hard labor, while Yusufu remains close to home. It is not just." The brothers' resentment grew like thorns in their hearts, choking out any brotherly affection they might have felt. One morning, Yusufu came to his brothers as they prepared for their day's work. His face was bright with wonder. "Brothers," he said eagerly, "I must tell you of the dream I had last night. We were in the fields, binding sheaves of grain. Suddenly, my sheaf stood upright, and all of your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." The brothers stopped their work and stared at him. Judai spoke first, his voice cold. "So you think you will rule over us? You think we will bow before you?" "I only tell you what I saw," Yusufu replied innocently. "Perhaps it means nothing." But the brothers knew it meant everything. From that day they could barely speak a kind word to Yusufu. Several weeks later, Yusufu had another dream, even more remarkable than the first. Again, he shared it with his family at the evening meal. "In this dream," Yusufu said, "I saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, and they all bowed down to me." Even Jacoby was troubled by this dream. "What kind of dream is this, my son? Do you imagine that I, your mother, and your brothers will bow down to the ground before you?" Yet in his heart Jacoby wondered what these dreams might signify. The seasons turned, and the time came for the brothers to take their father's large flocks to distant pastures where the grass grew tall and green. They traveled north for many days until they reached the plains near Shechem. After several weeks had passed, Jacoby grew concerned. He had received no word from his sons about the condition of the flocks or their own well-being. He called Yusufu to him. "My son, your brothers have been gone for many days. Go and see how they fare, and bring me word of their welfare and the health of the animals." Yusufu put on his colorful robe and set out on the long journey. He traveled for 2 days, following the path his brothers had taken. When he reached Shechem, he found the grazing grounds empty. A local farmer saw him wandering and called out, "Are you looking for the shepherds who were here? I heard them say they are moving on to Dothan, where the grass is better." Yusufu thanked the man and continued northward to Dothan. He did not know that he was walking toward his fate. The brothers saw him coming from a great distance. The bright colors of his robe caught the sunlight like a flame. "Look," said Shimoni, pointing, "here comes the dreamer." The brothers gathered together, and an evil thought took shape among them. "This is our chance," said Levi. "We are far from home, far from our father's eyes. No one would know what happened to him." "We could kill him," suggested one brother, "and throw his body into one of these old cisterns. We'll tell father that a wild beast devoured him." "Yes," agreed another. "Let us see what becomes of his dreams when he is dead." But Reubeni, the eldest, felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "No, brothers, we must not shed blood. That would bring a curse upon us. Look, there is an empty cistern nearby. Let us throw him into it. He will die on his own in time, and we will have no blood on our hands." Reubeni spoke this way because he secretly planned to return later and rescue Yusufu, bringing him safely back to his father. But he did not reveal this intention to his brothers. The others agreed to Reubeni's plan. They waited, watching Yusufu's approach, like predators watching prey. When Yusufu finally reached them, his face bright with the joy of reunion, his brothers fell upon him. They seized him roughly, ignoring his cries of confusion and fear. They tore the beautiful robe from his body, the robe that had become a symbol of everything they resented. "Please, brothers," Yusufu cried, "what have I done? Why do you treat me this way?" They did not answer. They dragged him to an old cistern, a deep pit cut into the rock that had long ago gone dry. They threw him down into the darkness. Yusufu landed hard on the stone floor far below. Pain shot through his body. He looked up at the circle of light above, where his brothers' faces appeared as dark shadows against the sky. "Brothers, please," he called up, "have mercy." But they turned away, and Yusufu was left alone in the dark. The brothers sat down to eat their midday meal, trying to ignore the faint sounds of Yusufu's pleas rising from the cistern. As they ate their bread and dried meat, Judaiah looked up and saw something on the horizon. "Brothers, look," he said. "A caravan approaches." They all turned to see a long line of camels moving slowly across the plain. These were Ishmaelite traders, traveling from Gilead down to Egypt, their animals laden with spices, balm, and myrrh. An idea formed in Judea's mind. "Brothers, what do we gain if we kill our brother? His blood would be on our hands, and we would have to carry that weight forever. But if we sell him to these traders, we rid ourselves of him without committing murder, and we profit as well." The brothers looked at each other. The idea had appeal. It would solve their problem and fill their purses. "He is our brother, our own flesh and blood," Judaiah continued. "Better to sell him than to kill him." All the brothers agreed, except Reubeni, who had walked away from the camp to check on some of the sheep. He was not present when this decision was made. They pulled Yusufu up from the cistern. He was bruised and frightened, but relieved to see the sky again. "Thank you, brothers," he gasped. "I knew you would not." But his words died when he saw them approaching with ropes. The brothers bound Yusufu's hands and led him to the traders. The chief merchant looked the young man over carefully, noting his strong build and healthy appearance despite his distress. "How much for this one?" the merchant asked. 20 pieces of silver," said Judai. The merchant considered. Slaves were valuable in Egypt, especially young, strong ones who could work for many years. "Done," he said, and counted out the silver coins. Yusufu could not believe what was happening. "Brothers, no, please! I am your brother, your own blood. Do not do this." But the coins changed hands, and the traders added Yusufu to their caravan. As they led him away, Yusufu turned back, tears streaming down his face. "Father!" he cried out. "Someone tell my father!" But his brothers stood silent, watching him disappear into the distance. Each held silver coins that suddenly felt very heavy in their hands. When Reubeni returned to the camp and learned what had happened, he tore his clothes in anguish. "The boy is gone!" he cried. "What have you done? How can I face our father?" But it was too late. Yusufu was already far away, heading toward Egypt and an unknown fate. The brothers now faced the difficult task of explaining Yusufu's disappearance to their father. They took Yusufu's beautiful robe, the symbol of their jealousy, and slaughtered a young goat. They dipped the robe in the animal's blood until it was soaked and torn. Then they made the long journey home, rehearsing their story. When they arrived, they presented the bloodied robe to Jacobi. "Father," they said with false sorrow, "we found this. Look at it carefully. Is it not your son's robe?" Jacobi took the garment in his hands. He knew it immediately. He had commissioned it himself, had watched Yusufu wear it with pride. Now it was returned to him torn and covered in blood. "It is my son's robe," he cried out. "Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Yusufu has surely been torn to pieces." Jacobi tore his own clothes in grief, as was the custom. He dressed in rough sackcloth and began a mourning that would last for years. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him,
But he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, weeping, "I will go down to the grave mourning for my son." The brothers had to live with what they had done, watching their father's daily grief and knowing they had caused it. The silver coins they had received now seemed like a curse rather than a blessing. But they maintained their lie, and the years passed with the secret locked in their hearts.
Meanwhile, Yusufu traveled south with the Ishmaelite caravan, bound in chains like common goods. Each step of the camel's feet took him farther from everything he had known: his father, his home, his people, his dreams. At night, sleeping on the hard ground under strange stars, Yusufu had time to think about what had happened. He could have given in to bitterness and despair. He could have cursed his brothers and his fate. But something in his character refused to surrender to darkness. Instead, Yusufu remembered the lessons his father had taught him. Jacobi had often spoken of their ancestor Abraham, who had also left his homeland and traveled to unknown places, trusting that his life had purpose, even when he could not see the path ahead. Jacobi had taught Yusufu that dignity and integrity were not given by others. They came from within, from how one chose to respond to circumstances. "I am still myself," Yusufu whispered in the darkness. "They have taken my freedom, but they cannot take who I am." After many days of travel, the caravan finally arrived in Egypt. Yusufu stared in wonder at sights he had only heard about in stories. The great river Nile, wilder than any river in his homeland. Cities with buildings of stone and brick. Temples with massive columns. And everywhere, people of different colors and tongues, all mixed together in the busy marketplace. The traders took Yusufu and their other goods to the slave market in Memphis, where buyers came to purchase workers for their estates and businesses. Yusufu stood in the line of slaves, his head still held high despite his chains. A distinguished man approached, examining the slaves with a practiced eye. This was Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard, one of the most powerful officials in all Egypt. He was responsible for the safety of the king himself and commanded great respect. Potiphar stopped in front of Yusufu. He saw not just a young slave, but something more, an intelligence in the eyes, a dignity in the bearing. "This one," Potiphar said to the trader. "What is his story?" "He is from Canaan, sir, young, strong, and from what I have observed during our journey, unusually capable." Potiphar paid a substantial price for Yusufu, more than the traders had paid the brothers. He led his new slave back to his grand estate on the outskirts of the city. "What is your name?" Potiphar asked as they walked. "Yusufu, sir," he replied. "Well, Yusufu, in my household all people are treated with fairness. Work hard, be trustworthy, and you will be treated well. Prove yourself unreliable, and you will face consequences. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir, I understand." Yusufu was assigned to work in Potiphar's household, starting with the most menial tasks, cleaning the stables, hauling water, washing floors. But he approached every task with excellence and dedication. He did not work like a man forced into service. He worked like a man building something valuable. The other servants noticed. "Why do you work so hard?" one asked him. "You are a slave. Do only what is required and nothing more." "I work hard for my own sake, not for anyone else's. This is my work, and I will do it well." Within weeks, the household steward noticed Yusufu's capabilities. He began giving him more responsibility. Yusufu never needed to be told something twice. He anticipated needs before they were spoken. When he saw a problem, he solved it without waiting for instructions. Yusufu also demonstrated unusual wisdom in his dealings with others. When disputes arose among the servants, he helped them find fair solutions. When supplies needed to be purchased, he negotiated better prices than anyone else. When systems weren't working efficiently, he redesigned them. Potiphar himself began to notice. One day he called Yusufu to him. "Yusufu, my steward speaks highly of you. He says you have capabilities beyond ordinary service. I am placing you in charge of my household accounts. Prove yourself in this, and there may be greater opportunities." Yusufu excelled at this new responsibility. He kept perfect records, managed the household budget wisely, and ensured that Potiphar's estate ran smoothly. He did this not because he sought reward, but because excellence was part of his character. Within a year, Potiphar promoted Yusufu to be his personal assistant and the overseer of his entire household. Every servant, every resource, every decision now went through Yusufu. "Yusufu," Potiphar said, "I have observed you carefully. You have integrity, wisdom, and skill. From this day forward, I trust you with everything I own. The only thing in this house that is not under your authority is my own food that I eat. All else is yours to manage." This was an extraordinary honor for a slave, but Yusufu had earned it through consistent character and competence. Under Yusufu's management, Potiphar's household prospered like never before. His investments multiplied, his fields produced abundant crops, his business dealings succeeded. Potiphar himself marveled at the change. "Since you came into my house, Yusufu, everything I touch turns to gold. There is something special about you." Yusufu bowed respectfully. "I honor you, sir. I simply try to serve with faithfulness and wisdom." For a time, life was good. Yusufu had not forgotten his home or his father, but he had found a way to thrive even in difficult circumstances. He had discovered that one could maintain dignity and purpose even when far from home, even when treated unjustly. But new challenges were coming. Now Yusufu had grown into a handsome young man, tall and well-built, with an aura of confidence and capability that drew attention. Potiphar's wife, a woman accustomed to getting whatever she desired, began to notice him. At first, she simply watched him as he went about his duties. Then she began to arrange to be in places where he would be working. She would make comments about his appearance, his strength, his intelligence. Yusufu felt increasingly uncomfortable, but remained respectful and professional. He avoided being alone with her whenever possible. One day, when most of the household was away at the market, Potiphar's wife approached Yusufu directly. "Yusufu," she said, her voice soft and inviting, "come spend time with me. My husband is occupied with his duties. He will not know."
Yusufu stepped back, shocked. "My lady, how could I do such a wicked thing? Your husband has trusted me with everything he owns. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I betray his trust and commit such a great wrong?" The woman's face hardened at the rejection. She was not accustomed to being refused, but she did not give up. Day after day, she made advances toward Yusufu. Each time he politely but firmly refused. He began to arrange his schedule to avoid her, but in a household where he was responsible for everything, this was difficult. One fateful day, Yusufu entered the house to attend to his duties. He did not know that Potiphar's wife had sent all the other servants away on errands. She had arranged for them to be completely alone. She approached him and grabbed his cloak. "Come with me now," she demanded. Yusufu pulled away so forcefully that his cloak tore and remained in her hands. He fled from the house, his heart pounding. The woman stood there, holding his cloak, fury and humiliation burning in her chest. She had been rejected, and someone would pay for that insult. She began to scream. The servants who had been nearby came running. "Look," she cried, holding up Yusufu's cloak. "That Hebrew slave my husband brought here came in to mock me and assault me. But I screamed for help, and when he heard my voice, he ran away, leaving his cloak behind." She kept the cloak until Potiphar returned home. Then she repeated her false story to him, adding more details to make it sound convincing. "That slave you trust so much tried to violate me," she cried with false tears. "I told you that bringing a foreigner into our home was dangerous. This is the result." Potiphar listened to his wife's words, his face growing darker with each sentence. When she finished, he called for his guards. "Arrest Yusufu," he commanded. "Take him to the royal prison." Yusufu was dragged away in chains once again. He had done nothing wrong. In fact, he had done everything right, yet he was being punished as if he were a criminal. As the prison doors closed behind him, Yusufu might have been forgiven for thinking that the universe was conspiring against him. First betrayed by his brothers, now falsely accused by his master's wife. Everything he had built in Potiphar's house was gone in a moment. Yet even in this dark hour, Yusufu did not lose hope. He had learned that his worth was not determined by his circumstances, but by his character. He would face this new challenge the same way he had faced every other, with integrity, dignity, and trust that his life still had purpose. The royal prison of Egypt was not like the dungeons of lesser kingdoms. It was where Pharaoh sent his own officials who had fallen from favor. The warden, whose name was Khenti, ran a strict but relatively humane facility. Still, it was a prison, and Yusufu was now counted among the criminals. At first, Yusufu was given the worst jobs: cleaning the cells, emptying waste, serving food to the other prisoners. But just as in Potiphar's house, he did these tasks with excellence and dignity. The warden noticed the new prisoner. There was something different about this one. He did not complain, did not plot, did not cause trouble. Instead, he seemed to bring a sense of order and calm wherever he worked. After several months, the warden called Yusufu to him. "You are not like the others here. Tell me your story." Yusufu told him everything.
his father's favoritism, his brother's jealousy, his sale into slavery, his service in Potiphar's house, and the false accusation that had landed him in prison. The warden listened carefully. His years of experience had taught him to recognize truth when he heard it. "I cannot free you," he said. "That is not within my power. But I can make your time here more bearable. From today, you will assist me in managing this prison." Under his management, the prison ran more smoothly than it ever had. The warden came to trust him so completely that he left most daily decisions to Yusufu. So Yusufu once again found himself in a position of responsibility. He was put in charge of all the other prisoners, managing their assignments and maintaining order. "I need not worry about anything when you are in charge," the warden told him. "You manage everything excellently." 2 years passed this way. Yusufu worked faithfully, day after day, though he did not know if he would ever be free. He might have been forgotten there, another wrongly accused man lost in the system, except that something unusual happened. One day, 2 new prisoners arrived at the royal prison. These were not ordinary prisoners. They were high officials of Pharaoh's court. One was the royal cupbearer, responsible for serving Pharaoh's wine and ensuring it was not poisoned. The other was the royal baker, who prepared the king's food. Both had somehow offended Pharaoh and been thrown into prison pending investigation. Because they were officials of high rank, they were placed under Yusufu's personal supervision. He attended to their needs and observed them carefully. One morning, Yusufu came to check on them and noticed they both looked troubled. "Why do you look so sad today?" he asked with genuine concern. The cupbearer answered, "We both had dreams last night, and there is no one here who can tell us what they mean."
In that culture and time, dreams were considered significant messages about the future. People who could interpret dreams accurately were highly valued. Yusufu said to them, "Understanding dreams comes from God, not from human wisdom. But tell me your dreams, and perhaps I can help." The cupbearer spoke first. "In my dream, I saw a vine with 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's cup. I took the grapes, squeezed them into the cup, and placed it in Pharaoh's hand." Yusufu considered this dream carefully. Then he said, "This is the meaning. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will restore you to your position. You will again place the cup in Pharaoh's hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer." The cupbearer's face brightened with hope. The baker, seeing that the interpretation was favorable, spoke up eagerly. "I too had a dream. In it, I had 3 baskets of bread stacked on my head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds were eating them." Yusufu's expression became grave. "This is the meaning. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will remove your head and hang your body on a pole, and the birds will eat your flesh." The baker's face went pale with terror. 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. During the celebration, just as Yusufu had predicted, Pharaoh restored the cupbearer to his position,
But the baker was executed. His body hung as Yusufu had described. The cupbearer returned to his duties, once again serving wine to the most powerful man in Egypt. In his joy at being restored, and in his busyness with his duties, he completely forgot about Yusufu. 2 more years passed. Yusufu remained in prison, his hair graying at the temples now, wondering if the cupbearer would ever remember his promise. Each time the prison gates opened, he hoped for news of his release. But day after day, month after month, nothing changed. Yet Yusufu continued to serve faithfully, managing the prison with integrity and wisdom. He did not grow bitter or lose hope. He had learned that his responsibility was to be faithful where he was, regardless of whether others kept their promises to him. Then, exactly 2 years after the cupbearer's release, something extraordinary happened that would change everything. Pharaoh himself had a disturbing dream. He was standing by the Nile River when 7 cows came up out of the water, healthy, fat cows that grazed among the reeds. Then 7 other cows came up behind them, but these were sickly and thin, uglier than any cows Pharaoh had ever seen. And these thin, ugly cows ate up the 7 healthy, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. This time he saw 7 heads of grain growing on a single stalk, each full and healthy. Then 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. And the thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up again. In the morning, Pharaoh was troubled. He sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. These were learned men who studied dreams and claimed to interpret them. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but none of them could tell him what they meant. The cupbearer, standing nearby as he performed his duties, suddenly remembered. His face went pale as he recalled the young man he had left in prison for 2 years. He approached Pharaoh nervously. "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and imprisoned me and the baker, we both had dreams on the same night. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And everything happened exactly as he had interpreted. I was restored to my position, and the other man was executed." Pharaoh immediately ordered, "Bring this man to me at once." Guards rushed to the prison. They found Yusufu managing the daily activities, his prisoner's garments worn but clean, his bearing still dignified despite his circumstances. "You are summoned to Pharaoh," they announced. They quickly brought him razors so he could shave, and gave him clean clothes. Then they rushed him to the palace. Yusufu, who had been a prisoner just hours before, now stood in the throne room of the most powerful ruler in the known world. Pharaoh looked at this former slave with interest. "I have had dreams that no one can interpret, but I have heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Yusufu bowed respectfully, but did not take credit he did not deserve. "I cannot do it by my own power," he said honestly, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he needs." This pleased Pharaoh. Here was a man who was honest about the source of his abilities. Pharaoh told Yusufu both dreams, the dreams of the cows and the dreams of the grain. Yusufu listened carefully. Then he spoke with confidence. The two dreams are one and the same. God is revealing to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one dream. The 7 thin, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. He continued, "This is what I meant when I said that God is showing Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but they will be followed by 7 years of famine. The famine will be so severe that the abundance will be forgotten." The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and he will bring it about soon. The entire court was silent, hanging on every word. Yusufu then did something remarkable. He did not simply interpret the dream, he offered a solution. "Therefore, let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine." The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. Pharaoh looked at his advisers and asked, "Can we find anyone else like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Yusufu, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Yusufu's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way!" In a single day, Yusufu went from prisoner to the second most powerful person in Egypt. He was 30 years old. 13 years had passed since his brothers had sold him into slavery. Pharaoh gave Yusufu an Egyptian name and gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of a priest of On. Yusufu traveled throughout Egypt, observing the land and preparing for what was to come. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Yusufu collected all the food produced in Egypt during those 7 years and stored it in the cities. In each city he stored grain from the fields surrounding it. The grain was like the sand of the sea, so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. During this time, Asenath gave birth to 2 sons. Yusufu named the first Manasseh, saying, "God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." He named the second Ephraim, saying, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." But Yusufu had not really forgotten his father's household. In the quiet moments he thought of Jacobi, wondering if his father still lived. if he still mourned the son he thought was dead. He thought of his younger brother, Benjamin, just a baby when Yusufu had left. He even thought of his 10 older brothers. And while anger no longer burned in his heart, he wondered what kind of men they had become. The 7 years of abundance came to an end, exactly as Yusufu had predicted. Then the 7 years of famine began, also just as he had said. There was famine in all the surrounding lands, but in Egypt there was food because of Yusufu's preparation.
When the people of Egypt began to feel the famine, they cried to Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh told all Egypt, "Go to Yusufu and do what he tells you." The famine spread across the entire region. Yusufu opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians and to people from all the surrounding countries who came to Egypt to buy grain because the famine was severe everywhere.
Far to the north, in the land of Canaan, Jacob and his family were also suffering from the famine. The old man, now very advanced in years, heard that there was grain in Egypt. He called his sons together. "Why do you just keep looking at each other?" he asked. "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die."